Hi Year 10, Mr. Tapley here for your next lesson of Year 10 Geography. This lesson we are looking at developing our understanding, our skills of graphs and graph practices, so what you need for graphs. So in maps we have bolts, and graphs to have a accurate, reliable and useful graph, each graph needs to have salts. We love our acronyms in geography. We've got bolts, salts, PQE, anyway. Success criteria is to interpret and evaluate examples of line graphs and to define the different elements of salts, which I'll be going over in this video. So as I said, in geography, all of the maps that we create use bolts. So it's a simple little checklist of features each map requires to be accurate and informative. Otherwise, it's not going to be providing us with useful, with relevant geographical data, and we can't use it to improve our human well-being. To create graphs, we use another easy to remember acronym, and that is SALTS. And that's scale, axes, legend, title, and source. SALT is used in any type of graph, and this checklist of key features will support your efforts creating graphs in the dev. As I mentioned in the last video, you need to understand choropleth maps and then graphs for the dev and for the cat, because you'll be using both of them in both of the assessments. Similar in structure, we've done that deliberately. We want you to have the dev, I guess, as a rough draft to practice for the cat, so it's important you understand bolts and salts. What is salts? So I've got an example of a graph here on the right. So we're measuring the temperature in Melbourne from November 3rd, November 9th. This is from last year. On the x-axis, on the horizontal here, I'm measuring the days of the week. Then on the y-axis, I'm measuring temperature. So each graph needs to have salts, and it needs to have S, a scale. So basically a scale is the units of measurement. So if I didn't have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, if I didn't have 18, 19, 20, if I didn't have those numbers and dates, I wouldn't be able to measure what this hell means. So I need to have units of measurement. I need to have a scale. Axes. I need to have a vertical, so the y-axis, and the x-axis here, horizontal. So I need to have two lines for my graph there to measure against. Otherwise, it's not a graph. L is for labels. So each axis, I need to know what it's measuring. If I had these numbers, so 28, 27, blah, 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 but I didn't have temperature, I wouldn't know what I'm measuring. It could be anything. And I need to know the x-axis as well. I need to know the label for that. If I didn't have days of the week there, I'm not sure what it'd be measuring. I probably could, because it's Sunday, Monday, but anyway. Title. I need to know what the graph data is displaying. You have to be careful with your title as well, because some people will write temperature, and they'll say, yep, all good. Not really. You need to be specific. So temperature for where? Temperature in Melbourne. When? November 3rd to November 9th. Excellent. That's a good title. And then finally, I need to have a source. So where and when was this data acquired? What this title doesn't tell me is the year that this information comes from, but that's all right, because it's in my source at the bottom there. So the BOM is the Bureau of Meteorology, the weather department in Australia, and the graph is from 2019. So each graph needs to have salts, scale, axes, labels, title, source. What I would like you to do this lesson is get some practice with salts. So please complete the following questions and activities in your digital notebook using the line graph on the next slide. Question 1. What elements of salts are missing from this graph? Explain the importance of adding these graph features. So looking at this graph here, I need to identify which elements of salts are missing. So I'd go through my checklist and I'd say, does it have this? Yes. Does it have this? Yes or no? And then I need to explain why it's important to have these features. Consider, would it be easy to read this graph if it didn't have a scale? Or can I get any useful information? Can I trust this information if it didn't have a label here? Question 2. Interpret the data in this graph. So you're going to have to do some reading, some watching, listening. When was the highest and lowest number of cod, which is a type of fish? When was the highest and lowest number of cod fished between 1850 and 2000? So that's what this graph is showing you. So the amount of Atlantic cod, so a type of fish, that were fished off the east coast from 1850 to 2000. So it's 150 years of fishing, which is an impressive number. Newfoundland is in Canada, by the way. Anyway, so you're looking for the highest and lowest value on your graph here. Specifically, the year. When was the highest and lowest number? Just need to write those two numbers down. Question 3. We're going back to Air Study 1. We're creating a nice PQE paragraph to summarize the information in this graph. So for those of you that can't remember your PQE, it's pattern. So what is the trend in this graph? So is the data going up, down, sideways, backwards, etc. Quantify. So after I identify the pattern, I have to prove that it is a pattern by giving some examples, some quantities, some numbers. So I would say the pattern is X, and it's clearly doing that because in 1890 there was this many people or fish that were fished. In 1950 there were this many fish that were fished. Anyway, and then exception. So you'll often find in graphs and maps that there's one value, one data, one point, one number that doesn't fit your pattern, and that's what you write in your exception. I've left you a little template down here that you can use as well. So this graph illustrates blank. The general pattern is blank, for example. That's where you put your quantities, and then the exception to this pattern is blah. So 3 questions there that you're completing for your salts, for your graphing lesson. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. We've got a few more lessons this week to play around with, and then we'll probably complete the dev in week 4. So the first week that you guys are actually back on site, which will be good. But I'll talk more about that later. I'll probably have a lesson this week as well for self-care. So basically a lesson for you guys to catch up, take a deep breath, relax. Any questions or concerns, let me know, guys. Otherwise, best of luck. Hope you're well, and cheers.